you very much, Hui Yao. It's a real pleasure to join this important event. And I would like to thank you and your co-organizers for the kind invitation and also for bringing me with this great panelists to mark the 20th anniversary of China's accession to the WTO. Today, I would like to look at China's WTO accession through the prism of the past, the present, and the future. Starting with the past, China's accession to the WTO was a defining moment for China, for its trading partners, and for the WTO as well. It took 15 years of hard work and dedication from the start of China's accession process to its completion. When China finally became the 143rd WTO member in December 2001, the WTO took a big step in the direction of universal membership. The accession of China, with 1/5 of the world's population at the time, helped put the letter W in WTO, bringing the organization one step closer to truly world organization. And the strength and credibility of the WTO was improved with just over 6 years old at the time. China's accession also raised awareness of the WTO and its fundamental principles of transparency, non-discrimination, and cooperation, both in China and around the world. With China joining the organization, you saw many more government officials, business leaders, academics, and civil society representatives in China, but also across countries, paying much closer attention to the world global trading system, its rules, negotiations, disputes, and even sometimes its day-to-day work in Geneva. In short, China's WTO accession was a big plus for the WTO. And it was, of course, also a big plus for China. Accession negotiations resulted in 44 bilateral market access agreements and over 750 pages of legal text. The commitments enshrined in those instruments provided an institutional anchor to the wide-ranging process of opening up, reforms, and liberalization that China started in the late 1970s. WTO accession also served as an accelerator of China's market-oriented reforms. In the run-up to its accession, China revised and updated a large number of laws that broadened market access opportunities, streamlined the trade regime, and created a more attractive investment environment. To take just one measure, China's average applied MFN tariff has decreased from 15.6% in 2001, just before China acceded to the WTO, to 9.5% in 2011. Since then, China has unilaterally reduced tariffs on a wide range of products, bringing down its average applied rate to around 7%. The remarkable transformation of the Chinese economy turbocharged a new era of globalization, with China as a trade powerhouse and a major hub for global value chains. Between 2001 and 2020, China's merchandise exports and imports increased more than ninefold. From being the world's 6th largest goods exporter and importer in 2001, China is now the largest exporter and the 2nd largest importer. China is also a major global presence in commercial trade, services trade, both as an importer and as an exporter, as well as a leading recipient and a major source of foreign direct investment. China's WTO membership has become emblematic of how integration into the global trading system can drive rapid catch-up growth and development. In 2001, China's GDP was $1.3 trillion. By 2020, it had increased by a factor of 11 to $14.7 trillion. Meanwhile, China's poverty levels tumbled from almost half the population to less than 1%, and the country's middle class expanded. And this is a fantastic success story. And it is also a cause for celebration, and the Chinese people should be commended for it. And the WTO members should be proud that the WTO has played such a central role in this unprecedented success story. Now, the gains from China WTO accession have extended far and wide beyond China's borders. For consumers, imports from China meant lower prices. For producers, China integration into the global economy meant new opportunities to join global value chains and access China's huge domestic market. So China is a top trading partner we've heard of a number of economies worldwide and a major trading partner of countless others. And all of them have gained from the policy stability and predictability that came with China's accession to the WTO. Now, today, China is an active player, confident and influential at the WTO. Its support to developing and least developed countries is particularly appreciated, from the preferential tariff treatment that China gives to LDCs, to its ongoing participation in the Aid for Trade initiative, to its overall engagement in South-South cooperation. And yet, one cannot overlook that China's 20th anniversary at the WTO coincides with rising pressures on the organization and the rules-based trading system. The WTO rulebook has not kept pace with the profound changes that are reshaping global trade. The WTO's dispute settlement system is paralyzed, and trade tensions have flared up in recent years, increasing the risk of fragmentation and increased policy uncertainty. We must urgently change course and revitalize trade and the WTO. And that calls for a relentless pursuit of additional trade reforms, because the work to reform trade remains unfinished, both in China and elsewhere. China's trade policy review, held last October in Geneva, highlighted several areas in need of attention. For example, many members expressed concern about the lack of transparency regarding China's state measures, not least what they perceive to be a generally opaque subsidy regime and the lack of timely notifications on key issues such as state trading enterprises and domestic support. Given the importance of SOEs in China's economy, many members also expressed concerns about the implicit support to them and the distortions they create. Other issues of concern raised by members during China's review included the protection of intellectual property rights, laws, and regulations related to cybersecurity and data management, and China's SPS regime. Members also encouraged China to further streamline administrative measures for foreign investors and relax remaining restrictions on foreign participation. I encourage China to carefully consider these issues as it continues the process of opening up to the world economy. And I equally encourage China's trading partners to consider any concerns that China has raised about their own trade and investment regimes. It is only by listening to each other in good faith, not talking past each other, that we will be able to advance the urgent task of revitalizing trade and the WTO. Let me now quickly say a word on China's accession to the WTO from the prism of the future. Cooperation at the WTO offers China and its trading partners many win-win opportunities to accelerate and deepen trade reform. The recent outcome on services domestic regulation is a good example of what is possible when WTO members work together to come up with meaningful, pragmatic, and common sense solutions to real-world problems. Just 2 weeks ago, 67 WTO members announced the successful conclusion of negotiations on disciplines that set a gold standard for services regulation. And China played a key role in bringing these negotiations to a successful conclusion. And we can talk more about the implication of this work. China has also been a driving force behind the WTO's work on investment facilitation, which brings together over 110 WTO members from all corners of the world, all sizes, all levels of development, to negotiate disciplines that will make it easier for investors to invest. And all are committed to wrap up negotiations within a year. Most recently, China also worked closely with Fiji to launch negotiations, to launch a discussion at the WTO on plastics trade. Again, another important topic. And in a welcome step, China recently decided to join a group of 60-odd WTO members doing focused work in areas such as trade and climate change and the promotion of trade in climate-friendly goods, services, and technologies. China is also an active participant in the multilateral initiative on digital trade. And while the new Omicron variant forced us to postpone our 12th ministerial conference 2 weeks ago, negotiations have continued, and China has been at the heart of the efforts to bridge outstanding gaps to deliver results on pandemic response, including intellectual property and fisheries subsidies. So we need to see in these areas, and I'm probably would like to say just a word on fisheries negotiations to say that in recent months, we have seen some forward movement in these areas, helped in no small measure by the engagement from key participants, including China, which has flagged that it would not seek special and differential treatment in these negotiations. And we need to see more of this flexibility from China and from all other key players if we want to deliver results and lay the foundation for WTO reform. That's why I'm deeply heartened by China's strong commitment to the multilateral trading system, as expressed at the fourth China International Import-Export by President Xi, who also indicated that China would take an open and active attitude in negotiations on issues as critical as the digital economy, trade and the environment, industrial subsidies, and state-owned enterprises. Let me conclude by reiterating that China's accession to the WTO 20 years ago has been a big plus for China, for the WTO, and for countless other economies around the world. And as one of the world's largest traders and a key stakeholder in the rules-based trading system, China has a key responsibility to work with others to put the WTO on the track to meaningful reform. I believe that China is ready to evolve from rule taker to rule maker at the global level. Thank you very much.
Okay.